Great. Good morning, professors, colleagues. My name is Jeremy Raguain, and I'm happy to be presenting on behalf of Leaf It for Nature. It's also a great pleasure to follow such informative presentations that have taken place today. I would just like to also thank this amazing team that has been led with Professor Rosen, as well as our deputy and manager, Basu and Yazan. This final briefing summarizes our work to understand the city's efforts to mitigate pervasive environmental problems that have a disproportionate impact on certain communities. By unpacking Local Law 10 and using the neighborhood of Mott Haven, we'll examine urban green infrastructure, or UGI's potential to tackle some of New York City's environmental problems. However, before we go further, it's important to remember certain facts about our concrete jungle. Before urbanization, this city was salt marshes, forests, and grasslands. Urbanization has disrupted and replaced natural systems, causing environmental problems such as stormwater runoff, urban heat island effect, and air pollution. These problems have varying impacts for different New Yorkers. Nevertheless, more than 27 billion gallons of raw sewage and polluted stormwater is discharged into New York Harbor each year. The city also records 370 heat-related deaths annually, with air pollution also responsible for 6% of annual mortalities. In this presentation, I only focus on two of these problems, stormwater runoff and the urban heat island effect. The inequity and severity of New York City's environmental problems are only set to grow if left unchecked. Local Law 10 was passed this year to help mitigate urbanization's disruption of natural systems and the impacts on marginalized communities. This law codifies a review process of city-owned sites in residential zones which may be suitable for the creation of small parks, bioswales, and UGIs. It prioritizes streets with dead ends, vacant land near highway entrances and underpasses in environmental justice areas, shown in dark blue, which New York City's Mayor Office of Climate and Environmental Justice defines as low-income or minority communities located in the city. However, this definition is not comprehensive. Ultimately, the identification of suitable vacant lots will help the city attract investment for small UGI in environmental justice areas. The mayor and affiliated agencies will identify one agency to lead the survey. This agency will develop a methodology for identifying and reviewing sites, collaborating with various stakeholders, including those listed here, and the public. Now I'll discuss the science behind the environmental problems that Local Law 10 addresses. Starting off with stormwater runoff. Urbanization replaces vegetation cover with impervious surfaces, reducing land's infiltration capacity and increasing runoff. While natural surfaces have an infiltration capacity of 50%, cities like New York that are covered by over 70% of impervious surface have only an infiltration capacity of 15%. This quadruples runoff and leads to increased flooding intensity and frequency, damaging homes and critical infrastructure. While some infrastructure has been built to tackle combined sewer systems, they are not keeping up with increased runoff caused by urbanization and climate change. Even moderate rainfall of less than 1 inch per hour can trigger combined sewer overflows or CSOs, and flooding disproportionately affects residents of basements and ground level apartments and coastal residencies, and the largest CSO outflows typically occur in minority communities. Next, in New York City's urban heat island effect is a result of its built environment and lack of UGI. Dark surfaces such as asphalt absorb sunlight and slowly re-radiate it as heat, making the city's average temperature 2.5 to 4 degrees Fahrenheit higher than surrounding areas. This can exacerbate summer heat waves, as demonstrated in the last days of July. Vulnerable people, like the elderly, children, and those with underlying health conditions are some of the most impacted by the effects of increased temperatures, which are shown in the graphic, to peak at night as a consequence of the slow release of heat. Climate change will only worsen the urban heat island effect and increase the city's heat-related deaths, as the average number of days above 90 degrees Fahrenheit is projected to triple by 2050. To understand Local Law 10's UGI's potential to mitigate environmental problems, it's vital to examine this issue at the community level. Mott Haven, a neighborhood in the South Bronx, bordered by 2 waterways and the Cross Bronx Expressway, exemplifies how low-income and minority communities are impacted by stormwater and the urban heat island effect. With 98% of its population people of color and a median household income of $32,000, about half the cities, Mott Haven qualifies as an environmental justice area. This status is reinforced by several factors. Firstly, Mott Haven's relatively flat, low-lying topography makes a city-designated flood zone. The map on your left shows in orange and blue where flooding takes place. Secondly, Mott Haven's 11% tree cover compared to the city's average of 32% means residents find little to no relief from the urban heat island effect. This contributes to neighborhoods receiving the highest score on the city's heat vulnerability index, which assesses where residents are more at risk of extreme heat, visible to the map on your right. In addition to addressing stormwater management needs and the urban heat island effect, the UGI Local Law 10 has potential co-benefits that contributes to communities' well-being. The following slides provide a brief overview of the UGI solutions that may result in Mott Haven through Law 10's implementation. To tackle stormwater runoff, for communities like Mott Haven's, UGI must prevent water accumulation on impervious surfaces. The city's existing UGI, like bioswales, has reduced stormwater runoff by up to 20% and can reduce CSO by 24% during long and intense storms. UGI can have an infiltration rate of about 0.8 to 1.6 inches per hour, depending on the soil's porosity, suction force, and stability, as well as the plant species the water demands. Once stormwater is captured by bioswales or other UGI, it percolates through the soil to recharge the groundwater or re-enters the atmosphere through evapotranspiration. However, these solutions are not effective against coastal surges and cannot prevent damage by extreme weather. Tackling the urban heat island effect in Mott Haven relies on increasing its tree cover. Local Law 10 could direct the city on where to construct small parks and plant street trees. Large leaf trees planted in high sunlit areas can mitigate the urban heat effect by blocking up to 90% of incoming sunlight, making shaded surface 20 to 45 degrees cooler. However, certain plant species may produce volatile organic compounds or pollen that can exacerbate health conditions like asthma and allergies. Falling trees are also a danger to people and property. Still, UGI provides co-benefits for communities and policymakers to consider. Accessing green space strongly correlates with improved mental health and reduced levels of stress. Also, such access is moderately correlated with improved physical health, like reduced heart and lung diseases and improved immune function. However, UGI as a solution is not without challenges. Installing UGI can lead to green gentrification, raising housing prices and displacing low-income and minority residents. Additionally, insufficient maintenance can lead to trash buildup and the attraction of pests like rats, leading to not only the opposition of UGI, but also reduced function. Lastly, it is difficult to precisely attribute some of the benefits of UGI to specific installations. Ultimately, Local Law 10's success depends on how much it mitigates key environmental problems in environmental justice areas. Less severe flooding events and cooler streets for neighborhoods like Mott Haven may only come if UGI is installed, but this survey is a crucial first step. Consequently, a key performance indicator, or KPI, for Local Law 10 is the number of suitable vacant lots it identifies, which will encourage the city to install UGI. In 2017, the Bronx alone had 4,000 city-owned vacant lots. Another KPI is the creation of a clear framework that maps the characteristics of vacant lots, like soil depth, porosity, while also accounting for community needs and ecological values. Lastly, the survey should develop metrics to evaluate environmental impacts such as runoff and temperature mitigation. In summary, Local Law 10's focus on identifying suitable vacant sites can encourage the necessary investment for small UGI that mitigates stormwater runoff and the urban heat, if well maintained and context specific. Moreover, UGI can improve social well-being if it aligns with community needs. However, this law's scope and hence its impact is limited as it only specifies a fraction of the city's vacant lots for additional urban green infrastructure and only includes a feasibility study without charting an implementation path. That's something we hope to look into next semester. In any case, our immediate next step is to submit our final report and unpack Local Law 10's policy-related opportunities and challenges next semester. Thank you. I'm now ready to take your questions.
Thank you so much for an amazing presentation. I'm very intrigued by the idea of green gentrification, by the concept of green gentrification. I haven't heard of it before. Could you elaborate on how that has sort of been seen in practice before in New York City? If you have any examples, or how do you think that is something that could be mitigated?
Thank you, Benita, for this great question. We were actually looking at a case study in Washington, D.C. that found, and it's I think from 2021, that found that when a lot of a great capacity of UGI was recently installed, Black residents in that area, about 4.1% of them were moved out. There's also been ethnographic surveys that talk about people's experience in terms of how housing prices, how culture and all these things are impacted by these installments. So it's an ongoing research. It's definitely something that needs to be extrapolated, but we should remain vigilant about this. In terms of tackling it, I think it all goes back to consultation of the communities. Who wants these things there and why do they want them there? And how many other priorities are being met when these things are being installed? Thank you for the question.
That was a great presentation. Building on what Menata asked, does that also look into how gentrification can be minimized in communities where greener spaces are built?
So yeah, thank you for that, Shubi. I think as a community, you see things being developed in that case, or you already have things there. And we're talking about market forces when people buy things. So there's limits to what maybe the city can do, but I think the city understanding where environmental justice areas are to begin with, who's in those environmental justice areas, I think that's the first step of understanding this. So again, I think Local Law 10's key focus is about a survey of these areas. So if you can understand the topography, the details and characteristics of the land, but also understand who's there and what they want, that may help us answer the question you've just posed.
Hi, Jeremy. Wonderful presentation. I'm sure I learned so much. I just wanted to ask you a quick question, and if you can't answer it, I'm sorry. Let's say a community wants Local Law 10 implemented, and they really are seeking UGI infrastructure. How would they go about advocating for Local Law 10 to be implemented in their community areas in a more expedited process?
So I hope I answered this question because it's interesting. When we were looking at how the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice defines an environmental justice area, it's quite vague in a sense. It can basically say you have a minority community and low income. So just that is an issue which community members have raised as an issue. I think when we're talking about how they themselves can come forward, I mean, we've been in consultation, I think, with REACT. We've attended things like South Bronx Unite, and these discussions are very important to mobilize people and understand a Local Law 10 like this even exists. I mean, you can find certain agencies that may not be as aware of this, let alone the public. So I think people need to raise the awareness on this issue in the beginning, organize, and then go to the representative who's basically bringing this forward. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a local law. So within the city, there are representatives that can ask these kind of questions and hopefully raise the profile of certain communities to get this.
Thank you so much.